Hi everyone, my name is Sarah and this is Rinkrat Knits and Stitches. Thanks for joining me on my YouTube channel today. So this is my second episode and it's been about 3 weeks since I recorded my first one, and there were definitely some lessons learned, especially with technology from that first one, which I think I alluded to. But creating content and posting things on YouTube is not for the faint of heart, and I have a lot more respect. I would say not that I didn't have respect before, but I have a lot more respect and admiration for people who can do this regularly and continue to keep it exciting and creative. But today I was just gonna give a quick update from the last couple weeks and show you what I've been working on as far as my knitting and my cross stitching. So I guess with that, I'll go into a quick life update for anyone who's interested. I mentioned in my last episode that I am on an adult synchronized skating team, which is one of the things that kind of ties into my name of Rinkrat. And we had our U.S. National Championship competition right at the beginning of the month of March, and that took place in Peoria, Illinois. So my team and I traveled from Michigan to Peoria to compete at the National Synchronized Championships, and we skated 4th out of 12 teams, and we skated our best skate of the season and had a personal best score of, I think, 7 or 8 points higher than we had at our sectional competition. We went from about 49 points to 56 points. So that was incredible. And we took 2nd place in the nation out of 12 teams. So that was a really exciting way to end the season for us. I'm more than happy to share pictures, footage of our program, and I'll try to tie that to the end of this video or put links down in the description box below. But that was kind of the main thing that was going on 3 weeks ago, was just traveling to Peoria with my team and getting ready to competing and then celebrating and having some fun times together afterwards. So a little bit of show and tell. I was just going to show off my national silver medal because I think that's pretty exciting. It's a little hard with the reflections from the light, but yeah, it was definitely a really proud moment for all of us and a great way to end the season. Fantastic kiss and cry moment. You cannot ask for anything more than to peak and to skate your best at nationals. So that was awesome. Because of traveling for nationals and focusing on that, I didn't really get a whole lot of crafting done, which is one reason that it's taken me a little while to post another video, in addition to like misplacing my headphones and getting my eyebrows waxed and not wanting to have bright pink face for you. All kinds of fun stuff. Let's see. So the other big news from the last couple of weeks is that my husband sat for his nurse practitioner board exam and he passed. So that's really exciting. He's going to start the job hunt soon, but there's really no big rush for that, which is really a blessing. He's happy in his current position, and really can just bide his time till the right opportunity comes along, which is really great. And it's so nice to not have him studying and stressed out anymore. So I'm really excited for him and glad that he was able to pass that. And I guess those were their 2 big pieces of personal life from the past couple weeks. As far as what I'm wearing, which I think I forgot to mention last time, I'm wearing a hat that my mom knit for me, and this is the Jason's Cashmere hat, which is a free pattern on Ravelry, and I think she made it out of Plymouth Galway worsted yarn. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is. And I really love this hat. It matches everything. I have a big head. It's really stretchy. And I have, hat hair today, so just throw on a knitted hat. One of the perks of being a knitter. And then as far as my sweatshirt, I'm not wearing a hand knit as far as a sweater, but I am wearing Death Before acrylic, which is from Spin Cycle. And I will give the caveat that I'm not a yarn snob. I think you should knit with whatever is affordable to you and whatever makes you happy. I just really like the snarky sentiment of it, and I think it's funny that it looks intimidating with the dagger, but it's really about yarn. So I love the sweatshirt. So I'll start with knitting first, and I don't have any finished objects from the things that I was working on previously, but I figured I could show a previous, like a former finished object. And this is a shawl that I finished last spring actually, and it's been around a long time. It's an Andrea Mowry pattern called Birds of a Feather, and my version is quite long, like insanely long, but I'm fine with that. I just wrap it around multiple times, and the way that it drapes is more of a scarf than a shawl, I would say, since it's not very deep. But I knit this out of Britty Ray Knits is the, I guess, main color, this off-white color with the speckles. And the colorway was called Snowy Owl. It's a single ply 100% superwash merino wool, super soft, and a really just beautiful yarn. This is the ball band. Like a Cloud is the base. And the colorway Snowy Owl was a Sleeping Bear club from Wool and Fibers up in Traverse City, or I guess technically Cedar, Michigan. And it was just a colorway that I really loved when I saw it. So I ordered, I think, multiple skeins. And then the mohair is a Farmer's Daughter Fibers, Mighty Mo, and the color is Winter Wolf. And so here's the ball band for that. And I had this yarn left over from shawls that I knit for my bridesmaids. We got married back in July of 2021, and I knit 4 shawls for my bridesmaids. The Ashes shawl by Locatelli, which I can show pictures of another time. But I had this colorway of the mohair left over from those, so it was a great way to be able to use it up. And then I saw a project on Ravelry that I really liked by Ravelrer Becky Barker, and she had replaced the first 4 rows of the mohair rows with another fingering weight yarn as a accent color. So I really liked the way that looked, and I chose to do the same thing for mine. And so my accent color that I used is Sweet Fiber Yarns, the Super Sweet Sock base, and this colorway is the Spanish Coin colorway. And so I was really pleased with the way this turned out. It kind of flew off my needles, even though it's a fingering weight shawl and it was massive. And I wore it to Rhinebeck and Wool and Folk. Yes, Wool and Folk, when my mom and I went there this past October, and I got a lot of compliments on it. So that was really nice that people also enjoyed this. And I think, I've been showing the correct side the whole time. Excellent. So that's probably one of my favorite makes to date, at least that I've made for myself. So as far as knitting whips, last time I talked about the Cowboys and Angels by Isabell Kraemer, and I thought I would have that done by now, especially since it's been 3 weeks and not only 2. And it's living in my Knitting Nelly bag, which now that it's spring officially, yay, I'm going to have to swap this out for my other one. So I'll show that next time. But so anyways, I thought I would have this shawl done by now, and I don't, because I was dingus when I bought this yarn, and I didn't actually really know what I was doing as far as knitting at that point. And I'm like 50 yards shy of the pattern, and I didn't realize it till I got through the second trellis section. And so the way that this pattern is set up, it's got this really nice big garter section in the middle, and then it has some bobbles again, and then trellis, and then it's supposed to have some more bobbles here before it finishes with ribbing. And I definitely don't have enough yarn for all of that, so I have some options. I thought I could just power through the trellis and go right into the ribbing and then bind off and call it a day, but I don't really think I like the way how that looks. I feel like it would have better symmetry, I guess, if there were bobbles again on the other side of the trellis pattern. So it's a little disheartening that I'm gonna have to re-knit all of this lace because that's not my favorite. If I was braver, I could do like surgery and cut it and whatnot, but I am not about to do that, so I'd rather just rip it out and redo it. But I guess I feel like I have a couple options. I could just cut out some of the garter, which is gonna involve the most math. I could keep going and finish like I mentioned, but I don't really want to. Or I thought maybe I could swap this bobble row out, like rip back to the garter and then go immediately into the trellis and then do a bobble row and then go into the ribbing. But I think the more that I think about it, I'd rather just have it look the way it was intended to, because that's the shawl that I saw and really liked, and I don't love the trellis moving right into the ribbing, so I'm just gonna rip it back. So anyway, this has been sitting like this for 2.5 weeks because I haven't had the, I don't know, wherewithal to rip it out and then redo it. But it'll get there. Otherwise I would have been done, which is frustrating, but I mean, it's just knitting and it's just for myself, so it's really not that big of a deal. And then I just moved on to other projects, so this one got put in timeout, but I will start ripping it back and figure out the math as far as how many garter section or garter rows to cut out. So that's where that one is. Let's see. I started a couple new projects since the last time I recorded 2. So one that I had mentioned in my last video as wanting to start is a wrap by Tiff Neilan called Rivers and Winding Roads, which I've had in my library and stash for a long time. And I feel like I got a pretty good amount done. So this yarn is Farmer's Daughter Fibers. Try saying that 3 times fast. And this is the base with the stellina in it, which I think is called Moon Sisters. Yeah, Moon Sisters. And this colorway is Dumpling, so it's the color that her sample was done in. And I thought this just felt springy, and it's something that I've wanted to knit for a long time. And I really like rectangular wraps as opposed to triangle shawls. I mean, I like both, but I think rectangular wraps are just easier for me to wear and style and not feel super awkward in. So I got a lot further than I thought I would. I had a little bit started when I showed this last time, but I couldn't figure out where that's not true. I could figure out where I was, but I clearly made a mistake or multiple mistakes in the lace, so I just ripped it back and started over. I didn't love the way that the cast on looked either. So this time around I did the I-cord cast on, and I think I'm gonna like the way that that looks better, especially once it's finished and blocked. So I worked on that for a while, and that is living in my Puff Stitch bag. And Puff Stitch can be found on Etsy. She makes really great bags, and they're local to me in Holland, Michigan, which is about 45 minutes west of where I live. So I think that's pretty cool. And I didn't mention for the Cowboys and Angels, the yarn I'm using for that is Neighborhood Fiber Company Studio DK in the Oliver colorway. And I did mention the bag, so that's good. Good job, me. It seems so easy when you're watching other people podcast or record, and then when you're doing it, yeah, it's not easy to remember all the things that you know you should mention. So another project that I started since my last recording is for my niece, who will be turning 1 in April, and her birthday is on April 29th, which is really easy for me to remember because that is my birthday. So that's pretty cool to have a birthday buddy, and she's pretty stinking cute and fun to knit for. So for her birthday, I wanted to knit her some garment-y kind of things because I've knit her a couple hats and a polar bear, Susan B. Anderson's polar bear pattern. I started a sweater and that was an epic fail because I didn't knit it fast enough and she would have outgrown the size that I was knitting. So I got smart and decided to knit the Love Note sweater, and I got smarter this time, I mean, because I'm knitting the size 1 to 2 years instead of like a couple months out from where she is now. And so this is the Love Note sweater by Tin Can Knits, which is a super popular pattern on Ravelry. I'm sure you've probably heard of it, but if not, that's fine too. I am using Sandisgarn alpaca silk, which is a really beautifully soft yarn. I was doing a lot of, I almost said chart diving, which is not knitting related, that's work related. I was doing a lot of Ravelry diving and looking for patterns after my niece was born because I wanted to find some fun patterns to knit for her. And there's so many super cute baby and like toddler knits from European designers. And I'm sure there are from American designers too. I just happened to find more designs from European designers, like Along Avec Anna and Petite Knits. Petite Knitter. I think Petite Knits. I always screw that up. And they use this Sandis garn frequently, as well as I think Knitting for Olive is another big one that I've seen used in their patterns. So I decided I would give this a try, and it is amazingly soft and really pretty yarn. I don't love knitting with it because it doesn't have a whole lot of bounce back. So I'm kind of curious to see what the final garment is going to look like and block out. Sorry, I feel like I'm talking really fast, but I felt like my last video I talked so slow that I needed to speed things up a little bit. So for my niece's Love Note, I am knitting the size 1 to 2 years, which should give her more time to wear it, which is great. I also didn't do a gauge swatch because I want it to be larger anyways, and since there is like that 1 to 2 years range, I'm not too worried about it because I know it'll fit at some point in the next year. So I have just completed the portions of the lace and the raglan increases, and I'm about to put the sleeve stitches on hold and continue the body. So I've gotten a pretty decent amount done on this, but I mean, it's on a size 10 needle, so it works up pretty quickly, which is awesome, and it's small. So for this, I'm holding this yarn double. I've made a Love Note for myself, and I held a fingering weight yarn with mohair. This, I think, is actually the first time I've held the same yarn with itself double for any kind of project, and so far that's going really well. Pretty much don't notice any difference. Like I said, my only beef with this yarn is that it doesn't really have a whole lot of stretch when you're knitting it, so I'm a little worried about what that might end up looking like at the end of the project and when I block it, but I think it should be fine. It's looking fine now, so I'm not really all that concerned. And I'm curious to knit with some of their merino wool too, which I have for projects for my niece as well. So this is, again, Sandus garn. I need to work on my Norwegian pronunciations. And I don't think they name their colors. The number is 8521, I think. And that is in a 2020 Rhinebeck project bag, which I didn't go to Rhinebeck in 2020. I went in 2022, but I really liked this logo, and they had a bunch of the 2020 merchandise left over from 2020 with COVID and stuff, which makes sense, so I picked it up. And it fits perfectly in here. And my last knitting whip that I'll share was one that I had started before the last video and didn't share it because I wasn't sure how much time I wanted my video to be. But this is the, again, pronunciations, Tsov hat by Caitlin Hunter, Boylan Knitworks, and I am using one of my favorite yarns that I mentioned in my last video, which is Stonehenge Fiber Mill Shepherd's Worsted, which is a non-superwash wool. It is worsted weight, I think light worsted, but it's so soft, and I've always wanted to knit myself a hat, especially with cables in this yarn particularly because it is so soft. And the current hat that I'm wearing that I mentioned earlier, I really love this hat, but after I wear it for a while my forehead gets super itchy, and I think that's just from the yarn. But this feels softer, so I don't think I'll have the same issue. And I am finished with the ribbing, which was a little bit of a slog. I hate 1x1 ribbing. I think everybody does, but maybe not. I wish I didn't. But I think it looks really nice. And I am just a few rows into the cable repeat, so not a ton to see yet, but I don't think it will take me too long to finish this. I'm trying to think of what colorway this is. I want to say sage. That sounds right. Looks right. Looks like a sage. I'm going to roll with it. And this is living in a Shirley Bryan yarn bag, which I love dinosaurs, and I just thought it was hilarious to see a logo with a knitting velociraptor, raptor of some kind, dinosaur. And so I just think this is one of the greatest logos. Plus she has fantastic yarn too. So those are my knitting whips. I mentioned that I wanted to start the City Limits sweater in my last video, and I haven't started that yet. I still plan to, which hopefully before the next one. And that is a Tanis Lavallee or Lavallee, I don't know, who is Tanis Fiber Arts. She dyes yarn and writes patterns and does a great job. She had a new sweater pattern come out too called the Terranova, which is in a DK weight, and it's a really pretty sweater that I am adding to my wanna do list. And then as far as knitting that I want to start soon, I had mentioned that I found a lot of really cute knits for my niece, and so I'm hoping before her birthday, or our birthday, that I can get the love note done. And then I found a really cute pair of bloomers called the Bean Sprout Bloomers by Knits for Olive, and I have some merino yarn for that I want to make those bloomers out of. And so I'll insert a picture of what those look like, but I think they're so stinking cute. So I hope I can get those done in the next month or so. I've also recently sort of discovered or rediscovered Jessica McDonald, who's a designer, and she has a lot of really cute children's patterns too. And she has a dress, I think, called the Sapling, and that would be another one that I would want to try to get done for my niece, but we'll see. And then, as maybe everyone has probably already seen or heard, Andrea Mowry of Drea Renee Knits just published her DRK Everyday Cowl, and I love it, which is no big surprise. So I bought that pattern today, and I really want to get one of those on my needles ASAP as well. So I'm hoping to get one of those started. So I think that was all of the knitting that I wanted to share. And I've also been working a little bit on cross-stitching projects. So the first one that I'll show, I worked on a little bit for Bridget, who is the museum stitcher. She was having a stitch along for her birthday, and she just asked that you work on or start a project that began with a B, or the designer began with a B. And so I was happy to find that one of my works in progress was a Bent Creek project, so that fit the bill, because I have a hard time starting projects, which I can talk about briefly in a minute, but this is Home by Bent Creek, and so I was happy to pick this up and continue to work on it. And it is in a Little Boat 88 project bag with the cats. And I didn't take any pictures of where I was last time or anything, but I was able to get a lot of the letters done. I think this heart, I don't remember if I had that done the last time. And I'm just using a 6-inch Q-snap, which I was never a Q-snap user until recently, because I don't think these existed when I used to cross stitch. Maybe they did and I just didn't know because I wasn't online, because I'm a millennial, an older millennial. And I'm just learning so much more about cross stitch this second go around because of all these floss tubes that I'm watching, which is really fun. It's been great for me, and I'm hoping that one day I can kind of pay back to the community and help other people or keep them company while they're stitching or knitting, and explain things that have helped me too. But speaking of that, needle minders. Again, needle minders, I never knew what a needle minder was like 10 years ago, so that was a great piece of information to learn about. Plus, I love collecting things, as I think many crafters do, and so needle minders are another fun crafty thing to collect. And this one is a Beanie Baby tag, and this I found on Etsy by Grandma Girl Designs. And she's got really great needle minders as far as I can tell, pretty strong magnet. So that is my home, which is slowly but surely getting done, which is great. And then the other cross stitch project that I worked on was the Little House Needleworks, Louise and Henry, which is this super cute sheep. Recently, especially this past year, I've become obsessed with all things sheep after attending Rhinebeck, and I want to have sheep of my own at some point. And this is living in a tiger lily. I just lost track of what these are called. I want to say Trapper Keeper, but I know that's not right. Project Keeper, and this was her January club. And this is turning out a lot bigger than I realized it was going to. I don't know why. I mean, I had the piece of fabric and the dimensions and just wasn't picturing the sheep being quite so large. But I think this is a 25 count Lugana, which I recently learned is the same thing as even weave. So thanks, Google. And I've gotten a lot done here. I think before I didn't have any of the sheep filled in. I think I only had the W done. So I finished the word wool. I outlined the grass so I can work on that. I finished outlining the sheep's body so I can fill that in when I'm not really paying attention and just watching TV. And I got the legs done. And for this needle minder, this is a really cute Mary Poppins needle minder. And this was made by Mad for Minders, also found on Etsy. So this is my Louise. Pretty pleased with the progress I've gotten done on this as well. And I have a couple cross-stitch acquisitions, not many, but just market releases that I'm sure are not new information for anyone. But I'm obsessed with Halloween cross stitches, and I really liked the Enchanted Quaker by Luminous Fiber Arts, and so I picked up this pattern from Top Knot online, and that's not spelled with a K. And then the other one I saw was one that I saw on Bridget and the Museum Stitchers Flosstube. I'll just leave it in the bag. Sorry for the reflection in advance. And this is a Plum Street sampler, which I love Plum Street's designs. And this one's called Spring Moon. And it has this super cute bunny. Sorry for the crinkly noise. There's either going to be a crinkly noise or a terrible reflection, so I don't know, pick your poison. And I saw that the designer commented somewhere that she doesn't usually design in these colors, like the blues and the greens. So it is a little bit of a different design for her, but I really like it. I like the huge flowers and the moon and the house. And my style as far as cross stitching is more of like the primitive look. Not so much like, I don't know, the bright colors. I like more of the muted primitive colors, or Halloween and fall. I don't know. I just love Halloween and fall cross stitch. Which leads me to my next planned start for cross stitch, which I think I talked about briefly as an option last time. But I'm going to start the Salem Sisters Apothecary, which was a market release last year. And I am a pharmacist, so I just am drawn to all things that are like chemistry, glassware, and potions, and apothecary, and spooky kind of stuff that still feel related to pharmacy. So I was really drawn to this one, Tonics, Brews, and Spells. And the other great thing about this pattern is it's one color, and I'm a big fan of monochromatic charts. I found a needle minder, Mad for Minders, a cute Halloween one that I'm going to use. And I am going to put this on 32 count Legacy Fiber Arts linen in the colorway Covered Bridge, which I think will give it a really nice vintage look. And I have the Called For Floss, which is Weeks Dye Works Cowl, K-O-H-L. So I think that'll look good. And then I will be keeping it in this cute Halloween vintagey fabric bag. And this bag was made by Sherry So Sweet. Am I remembering that correctly? Yes, Sherry So Sweet on Etsy. She's located in the Twin Cities area, and her shop name on Etsy is spelled Sherry, S-H-E-R-I, So S-E-W, Sweet. And then I added this cute pin that is a frog witch on a broom, and I got that in a Farmer's Daughter Fibers kit this fall. That pin was made by Lively Ghosts at livelyghosts.com. I haven't looked at any of their other pins, but I just thought that one was pretty stinking cute. So I mentioned last video that I was debating which project I wanted to start, and maybe I should pick something that was springy because spring is arriving shortly. But I'm really drawn, like I said, to Halloween cross stitches and fall, and I don't know, I just figured just stitch what makes me happy, and this felt easy because it's one color and I already had the fabric in mind and I have the pattern all ready to go, so I'm gonna go with this. I have recently been watching Knitting in the Dark podcast and Prickly Stitches podcast on YouTube, and both have inspired me to look for projects that I can knit in black yarn and to kind of get in touch with my inner goth side. So I figured this is a great way to do that. Yeah, so I mentioned earlier that I have a hard time with starts, I think especially for cross stitching, not so much knitting, but I have a hard time making decisions and narrowing things down. And I don't know if you all are into personality traits or quizzes and all that stuff, like, I'm not going to remember what it is, the 16 different personality kinds, I think Myers-Briggs, something like that. But I have done a little bit more reading into the Enneagram, and I'm an Enneagram type 9, if that means anything to you, and basically part of 9's personality is they have a really hard time making decisions, which is me to a T. And so when I have so many different options for fabric and floss, and then I'm trying to come up with my own conversions for things, or even decide what size linen to use to start a project, I just get really confused and work myself into a little bit of a tiz, and then I feel like I can't start anything because I'm just overwhelmed by the amount of choices that I have. So I thought this was a good way to start a project and not have to really stress out about, I don't have the called for floss, so what's the best conversion? What do I have? What kind of stitch alongs can I join? All that kind of stuff, because the awesome thing is there's so many options available out there, especially watching Flosstube and seeing what other people are doing. But for me, it just kind of confuses the picture. And then I'll order fabric and have something in mind for it, and by the time it arrives, I can't remember what I was planning for that fabric, and so I need to be better at taking notes and keeping track of my inventory. And so I've recently started watching a newer Flosstube called, I think, the Northwood Stitcher, whose name is also Sarah, and she lives in Maine, if I'm remembering correctly. And she mentioned a really great app for your phone, and now I'm mentioning this and can't remember what the app is called, so I'll put it on the screen because I can't remember. But it's really great because you can keep track of your inventory as far as floss and patterns, so if you're shopping somewhere or not at home, you can quick check and see what do I have already. And I think there's also like a journaling option, so you can keep track of when you started pieces and when you finish them, as well as just take notes. Like, oh, I think that was the other thing. In your inventory, you can take notes if you were intending to use that for something. So like with a color floss, if you want to put it in, you can say, I was planning to use this floss for the Salem Stitchers Apothecary, and then you're not getting the floss in the mail and trying to figure out what the heck you were going to do with it. So I would recommend checking out her Flosstube. She's been stitching for a really long time and has so much experience and lots of helpful hints. So I think she's a great one to follow. And then, like I mentioned earlier, I've just really been enjoying Knitting in the Dark and Prickly Stitches, because I think they're really funny and I just enjoy watching them. And it's really opened my eyes to knitting with dark yarn or black yarn. I've just kind of discounted that as an option because I know it's hard to see and didn't want to make my life harder as a newer knitter, but now I'm inspired to see new projects when they come out and think about, oh, how would that look like in black yarn or with a black combination? Because I tend to wear darker colors. I enjoy bright colors, but I don't enjoy wearing them. So I think maybe I'll jump on the black yarn bandwagon. Although it's not a bandwagon because not that many people do it. So that was the knitting and cross stitching that I wanted to share, as well as kind of a quick life update. If you've listened this long, thank you again for bearing with me. I hope these videos will get better as they go along, and I'm sure they will. It's just practice. I know that I'm not like the highest energy person like a lot of enjoyable creators out there on YouTube, so I appreciate if you're just popping me on to keep you company while you're knitting or stitching and don't necessarily need someone high energy. So I appreciate watching this introvert talk about her knits and stitches. Feel free to leave any comments below or questions. Let me know what you're working on. Yeah, and you can find me on Ravelry or Instagram as Rink Rat Knits, and I have those both linked in my YouTube channel. So I'm planning to upload this in a higher resolution. That was number 1 lesson learned from a few weeks ago, and I'm hoping it won't take ages to figure out that process again. And then I will be better about videoing, recording another video in 2 weeks as opposed to longer time than that. Yeah, so thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you guys again in 2 weeks.